نبي الله صلاة والسلام عليك وعلى آلك وصحبه رحمة للعالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته to Sheikh and to all our participants. Inshallah, today we will have Sheikh Jamil who will be speaking about the amana of preservation of our Dini heritage as well as our familial heritage. Inshallah khair. I hand over to Sheikh. Sheikh, tafaddal. Sheikh, we can't hear you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has granted us the ni'mah to sit in majalis of ilm, which is very important for a family or a community to uphold. For it, without the accessing knowledge, and also from where we take our knowledge, one would not be able to apply oneself according to the deen correctly. That is because the scholars of the deen, like Abdullah ibn Mubarak, has stated that indeed isnad is from the deen. So look from who you take. So a very simple example is that if somebody is giving sweets out in the streets, your children are not going to take from it. But if they receive the same sweet from an uncle or from a family member, they are more readily to accept the same sweet that they've refused from a stranger. So this brings us to the topic tonight of AMAANAH, of the preservation of our Deeni heritage as well as our familial heritage. And the two goes closely together and cannot really be separated in any particular manner. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the glorious Quran, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ مِنَ الْمَاءِ بَشَرًا فَجَعَلَهُ نَسَبًا وَصِهْرًا وَكَانَ رَبُّكَ قَدِيرًا. It is He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has created mankind from a watery substance, فَجَعَلَهُ نَسَبًا, and He has from it created familial ties, and also through marriage. وَكَانَ رَبُّكَ قَدِيرًا. So a simple responsibility is for each and every family to preserve their heritage in terms of their nasab. And I'm going to stress the first and the most important one is that do our children in the house, do our members in the house, father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, do we know the nasab of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Do we know the nasab of his mother? You know, and to what extent do we know? Because this is all part of Iman. If a person says, I believe in Muhammad, but he came from Iceland, that would be kufr, because the Prophet ﷺ has never been recorded to be in Iceland. So he was born in Makkah, وَمَهْجَرُهُ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ, and he migrated for his deen to Medina. So many of us, or our parents, or our foreparents, were not born in South Africa. Some of them were born in India, some of them were born in Indonesia, some of them were born in Africa, and a lot of us are siblings of those parents, and we find ourselves in South Africa. Yet we are tasked to know not only from where our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents came, but what was the reason that they have migrated from India to maybe a country en route to South Africa. And ultimately one will find that the aspect of preserving the deen plays a big part, because for as long as a family cannot secure their living under good conditions, looking after their deen firstly, and then secondly, their livelihood. If the livelihood is threatened, then the deen will also be threatened. And that is why Nabi Muhammad has commanded Muslims until the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah to make hijrah. For indeed, with the moving from one country to another country, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens his doors of rizq, opens his doors of da'wah in ways that we can't imagine. That if we look at South Africa, generally was a prison state. You know, the Dutch use it for what they would term as criminals and prisoners and people that are not really a benefit to society according to their beliefs, place them in jails and make them work for the Dutch, the English, the Portuguese, and strip them of all freedoms, including religion. So this brings us to the fact that they, through their actions, wanted to wipe out the light of Nur of Islam and Iman from people. وَيَعْبَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا أَن يُتِمَّ نُورَهُ. But Allah has refused except to complete His favor and complete His favor of the deen on those people in the greatest honor, because they are faced with an enemy on a daily basis. Even though their powers are stripped, they are in jihad from the time that they have landed into the new country, and they take upon an amanah. So if you take our situation in South Africa, that mostly prisoners or people were brought in as slaves through the ports of Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, and then later Durban also. And the appalling conditions that they were seek to earn a living for that. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made them strive. That today, that we are probably one of the most exemplar Western societies in which Islam is preserved. There are many examples of migrants that have gone from the Middle East to places like America, to South America, and Islam has totally left those families. Not that they did not make the effort, but at some point, the one generation was totally cut off from their history, and therefore, because you are cut off of any recognition from where you come, what religion you followed, what are the exemplary examples of how a particular family or your family practiced Islam, no matter what the conditions was. And if this is not told from generation to generation, then we are in a position that we don't want to be in 100 and 200 years, is that we have not left enough of our heritage, that which we know from our parents, our great-grandparents, from which villages they came, what was the greatest aim in life, how did they fulfill it, what was it, some of the chores that they would do. I will give you an example. We grew up with my grandfather, and we always noticed that, you know, from Wednesday, he's washing his clothing, he's bleaching it, he's ironing it himself, he's starching his face. And we say, Opa, but you're washing your own clothes, but there is a maid in the house that can do it for you. And his answer was, you know, how can I abdicate my tahara to someone that does not even know the deen? You know, so these are small, look like small matters, but it is really great in that you see what your grandparents strive for, and how they principally live their lives. So that this then becomes a institutional family way to make sure that they participate in the deen in a manner that they are responsible for it themselves, rather than abdicating it to somebody that has no essence of tahara. For instance, if you have small children and they take a nappy and they put it with a kurta and all of it is white and they're all in this tumbler and it's all becoming najis. So it looks clean, but you go to masjid and one of the conditions of the salah to be accepted is not fulfilled. You know, and that is because of whatever reason we think that maybe it's not befitting for me. You know, I'm a lawyer. Why must I wash my own clothes? I can get somebody to do it. Yes, you can. But did you place the amana of teaching the people? You know, because that could be a mode of da'wah again, to invite others to Islam by instilling principles and explaining them why you live this almost a pure type of life, where you know, you do not care if you have a servant in the house, but you're going to fulfill the duties that is mutually consented between you and your wife. So this brings us to the topic of the children. Today, most parents or both parents work, and that leaves the children either at the care of domestics, or if you have proper running institutions of madaris in your area, you're going to send them to learn DEENI knowledge, which is good. But at the end, how many of us sit and interact with with our children with that which they have learned? What active role do we take, for instance? For example, a very typical example in our society is that our children will go to a tablighi madrasa. And if they excel in madrasa and they want to study further, they go to Darul Ulooms. Yes, they have knowledge, but with this knowledge, they will come back and they will destroy the family. Why? Because the principles on which that family has been built for generation from generation will now be placed into question, and everything that family has inherited from the mashayikh and from father to grandfather to great-grandfather for generation and generations will now be questioned, to the point where they would not even consider some of them to be Muslim, you know, depending on how this knowledge is transferred to them. And sometimes it might never come out in conversations, but you will see the reactions when the family partakes in either milads, or, you know, there's a Ur Sharif that happens, and then you will see the resistance. That is because the amana of knowledge has not been transferred over to the child. Like the Mashayikh says, ilmul lisan, the knowledge of the tongue, wa jahlul qalb, but the ignorance of the heart, fantabihi. This is the greatest type of ignorance that you will have, is that you will have a person that is particularly trained to use the tongue to sow discourse between people, exactly the way Shaitan was trained. And for that matter, it is very important to always try and engage families, that if a particular family does not have the capability to question or to guide children, is to rather depend on the greater nucleus of family, whether it is cousins, uncles, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, that they should meet regularly, and a responsibility being given on each and every one in accordance to the capabilities and technical abilities of that particular family. And in that manner, you are helping one another to function as a family in a whole. So, for instance, if Brother Samir is the great mathematician in the family, then all the children will come together. It is time that families bond, because mothers will bring them, fathers will pick up the children. They will spend time interacting with the family rather than sending them off to strangers, and you do not know. They might learn the knowledge, but the akhlaq that goes with that knowledge is not befitting for the children too. But in this familial environment, you will find that it is then an amanah that is easier preserved So I wanted to just give an example of why it is important for families to if I had to ask each and every one of you, if you have to look up your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, how far can you relate just the names of those whom you are directly related to? And if you have, if you know 3 or 4 up to great-grandfather, do you know anything about them? Do you know anything about their lives? Because this becomes important. And I'll give a small illustration. One family had very old books, and they had no reason, they had no need for it. And I looked at the book and I thought, look, it's virtually in a state where it is going to disintegrate. So I restored the book to good glory, and I deemed it fit to take a photo of the first 2 pages and the last 2 pages. You know, and when I looked at the document written in, I made a comment that this is the Mawlid Sharaful Anam that is preserved by the family, which is a Mawlid that is widely read amongst Cockney and Malay families. And this particular family, the family is, in each and every generation, they were imams in the community. So the person that wrote the book, he wrote it in 1823. His name was Khairuddin. But we grew up also with the Imam Khairuddin, but this was his grandfather. So you find that there was a particular manner that children will always carry the names of their grandfathers. Why? Because you relive who they were, what their roles were in society. So Imam Khairuddin, he had 3 sons, and they all came from the Sultan of Banten, Banten in Indonesia, and they were 3 brothers, Abu Rafi, Abu Salih, and Abu Odin. So this was a kunyas that they, that they've adopted. And they had a folk story to say that their grandfather was with Tuan Guru when they came from Indonesia, and they were imprisoned on Robben Island. So from that information, we were able to ascertain that indeed he was with Tuan Guru on Robben Island. We could also establish that he came from a royal family. So at that stage, we could say royal would be that the rulers in Banten used to have royal titles, and their father, they used to call him Gabi, which is a royal title. Then also it stated that he got married to a lady by the name of Saleha or Saliha. But when she got married to him, she adopted a title called Saripa. Now, Saripa is an Indonesian pronunciation of the word Sharifa. And that's where the secret unfolds, because she's a Sharifa, meaning she's direct family of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and she got married to Gabi, who is royalty. right? But royalty here would then mean that he is also direct family of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because a female descendant of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam can only get married to her equal. She can't get married to a non-descendant. So in this story that I'm telling you, it's a real one that's unfolding. You know, we are able to recapture some of the history of that family, and we know the recent history of that family is that they were the teachers of our mashayikh in our community, and that is how it is. So, in this particular family too, also, you know, when they're in the masjid and anything goes wrong, because of their upbringing, they don't have the patience to close the eye or say, no, we didn't see that. Something is wrong with regards to what's happening at our masjid. They are going to voice their dissatisfaction and try and solve it. So, inshallah, I will ask if there's any questions that anyone wants to address. There's various ways to try and get the physical information of your families, but it's always good to have a folk story that goes in the families and somebody to record that, because it's quite important. If this family didn't have a folk story to say that one of their grandfathers was Tuan Guru, you know, we would not even have wanted to research that avenue to see if it is truthful. So, Sheikh Samir, is there any questions from the listeners?
I'm handing over to the listeners. Anybody there that needs a question? I've got a question here from Rashid, Sheikh. With regards to the family tree and, like you said, the lineage, is there anybody in the community or communities around us that can assist families to work on their family trees or lineage? You know, I mean, if you're taking his family, for example, he knows still his grandfather and he doesn't even know more than that. How does he go about trying to track and trace further than that?
Okay, a good question. Yeah, look, the easiest way is to get to official documentation relating to that family. So obviously official documentations would either be documented death certificates, it could be birth certificates, it could be marital unions that has been declared in front of a judge, which we'll find that a lot of the older generations would have performed something like that just to legitimize their stay in the country, and then they would perform a Islamic nikah and so. So there is, I can share with you, Sheikh Samir, I can share a website. It's called Family Tree, and it's largely for free. I don't think, you don't pay anything, right? And then what you do is you actually plot the names down that you want to research, and it will bring up results and documents. Like, for instance, the person would say, my grandfather's name is Muhammad Zainuddin, and he, maybe you don't know where he was born, but you know he passed away in Johannesburg. So you put those parameters in, then you search the documents. It will bring up results, and then you go through to verify those results, and ultimately you will find that you will be able to find that documents. And then whatever information you have on that document, for instance, and it's particularly prevalent in the older documents, that each and every familiar, major or minor children are mentioned in the document. You know, so you can then trace back, use that to trace back as far as you can. You know, I looked at our particular family history, and the furthest I could go so far was my great grandfather, and I could trace a marriage in Middelburg, Cape, in Cape. But because my grandfather passed away much earlier than my grandmother, I got much more information on my grandmother, whereas I'm still struggling to get through to him. But inshallah, you know, so it takes a lot of sabr, and sometimes if we have names of a few people that can help, if we, you know, if the information is really from families that well known, you know, then we can get further information from that, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah Sheikh for that. Is there anyone else maybe got a question for Sheikh? Or else then we can round off. Okay, Sheikh, seems like there's nobody going to ask questions. So if anyone wants to even share an email with a question, you're welcome to do so. I'll forward it to Sheikh, inshallah, and get the reply, and maybe Sheikh can respond to that. Jazakallah for your time, Sheikh. Really appreciate it. Coming
Inshallah.
towards the end of the year, and we will be having, like I'm repeating for the last couple of weeks, inshallah, maybe a small get together with all the speakers and some of the participants who will be available to discuss certain plans for next year, inshallah.
That will be good, Sheikh Samir. And then I will share the family tree link with you. You know, obviously you have to register, and then you send you an email to confirm that it is you seeking it. And then virtually immediately you are able to access onto the site. And you, the site also has a facility for you to plot whatever information you discoveries you have. You can actually plot the family tree on there, and as you go, you can just add on, inshallah.
Inshallah, Jazakallah for that, Sheikh. Okay, Sheikh, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and to all our participants. See you all next week, inshallah khair.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Have a safe festive if we don't see or speak to you again, inshallah.
Inshallah khair, inshallah khair.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.